Hey Candace, so this is the next step for Champagne on Rio. In the interactions document, I went ahead and made a initial list, and I'll add to this later if you need me to, but if this video is enough, then we can leave it at that. So the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to set up an account. I have already made you an admin, so you should have an email, but in case you don't, all you need to do is go to this link right here. When you put that link in, it'll take you to your Express sign-in page, and you'll just add your password and then sign in. And once you've done that, it'll take you to this page. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to Manage Learning Content, and then you're going to go to Courses. And then you want to make sure that you click on the Champagne on Rio course that has my name on it. I'm not really sure what this one is, but it's definitely not the one we want to mess with. So I'm going to click on this and go into the course. And the reason that we're going to do it this way is because the content is already in the course pages. So you'll be able to see what content specifically is not already in an interaction. For this example, I figured we could do 1.1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up 1.1. And I'll have to open this up in parallels, of course. Since we already have the timeline approved, and that one is built in iSpring, which is where we want to be, so definitely be in your parallels. I'm going to go ahead and open that one up and use it as a template. So I'll make sure that you have this template so that you can kind of just plug and play for the rest of them. All right, so I'm going to go into my timeline. I'm going to make sure it's opening in my parallels. This already has all the settings where they need to be. They really, really liked the movement that was in this one, so you can even keep some of the transitions if you want. The other thing I wanted to show you was the fact that there is audio in this, and I did it all within iSpring PowerPoint. If we have time, that's something that I'd like to do, but we can kind of get into more detail on that later. Okay, so if you go to the iSpring part, you can see Manage Narration. And when you open that up in this, you'll see that I have the narration built in. And you can actually move around these little areas pretty easily. And you can also edit the audio within this presentation. So it's not too hard to work with. But like I said, we'll get into that in just a little bit. Well, my first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click Save As. Go to where my interactions are. I'm going to save it as... Oh, and also make sure that you're saving your presentation as PowerPoint 9/7/2003. I think what you've been saving it as, or maybe it's saving this way automatically, is just PowerPoint presentation, and that's making it difficult to actually open up in Windows if it's not the most recent version. So it's actually kicking it over to my Mac every time I open it, and then I have to resave it as this version and then pull it back over into iSpring. And I don't want them to have to do that because they probably won't figure out that that's what they have to do, and they'll get super confused. Okay, so I've got my 1.1 now, so I've got it changed. I'm double checking that I'm good to go. And then I'm going to pop back over here to my lesson. And I want to make sure that I can kind of look at the content first and figure out what pieces there are of the content that kind of can be separated out into slides and start thinking through that a little bit. So the first thing that I notice is that I've got this main header that I want to try to emulate if possible. So I'm going to copy this, and since we're not confined to the rules of our presentation or of our course page, I'm going to see if there's a way that I can make it a little bit more interesting. So first of all, what I'm going to do is paste the name here. I can't do Control-Alt-Paste, so I have to just paste it, and then I go to text only, so that it keeps that same font. And this is the first module, so it's just about Champagne, not about Champagne on Rio. So I'm going to change this to the Champaign region. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to leave this here for now because I'm not sure what I want my front page to look like. So I'm going to leave it there and see what comes of it. So I'm going to go to my first title slide. I'm going to see what we talk about. We go into the crew classification down here, but up here we actually talk about terroir. So I think what I'm actually going to do is change the name of this lesson to just terroir. And then here in my first little section, I'm actually going to say terroir defined. If I have a picture, then I can kind of leave this here and come back and replace it with a different picture. For this, I'm not too thrilled with where that was located, so I'm going to kind of move that over and make sure that that's not too crazy. I like how it's aligned left, though, for now at least. All right, so this is my first section, and in this section, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs along with a map that's sort of referenced. So what I'm going to do is pull this map, and if it doesn't come across high res when I copy this and paste it, what I can do is go into the folder and actually pull this map and put it into the PowerPoint. But first, let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So I'm going to pull it into my title page. And I'm going to go ahead and just to keep it consistent, I'm going to crop this version of it, but we'll have a different version on the actual course page. This is just sort of an intro. Send to back so that my line goes over it like that. And that's all I need to do for that page. So now I'm going to move to my next page. And this is actually going to be a text page. So I'm going to get rid of this image, although that was a pretty cool image. Could almost use that here as well. Okay, so since I don't really need any of this on the top, I'm going to grab it and delete it. But I do kind of like this. It's quite nice, so I'm going to keep it. But I'm going to move it up. And obviously we're not talking about 1640. We're talking about terroir defined. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to grab my title. And I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to do text only. And kick it over until it can go all the way across. And then just move my line. These lines can be a little pesky, but I'll just get it until it's straight, and I think that looks pretty nice. Since they liked the way that this looked, I'm actually going to just keep that same look and feel. So I'm going to move my little green thing up and make sure that I've got the same kind of width around the edge of that. And then I'm going to copy my first bit of information and see how much of the page it takes up. I've been making the key terms Petersburg font with that gold color and bolded to kind of make it stand out just a little bit. And I don't think this needs to be quite that big. So I'm going to kick it down to about 24, which I think is plenty big. And then I like this image, but I feel like it needs to match the width of the text. Okay. All right, so I think that's a pretty good first page. Looks good. I don't see anything wrong with it. So now I'm going to right click it and duplicate. All right, so now let's look at our next little bit. Now what we're talking about is the latitude and longitude, and then the basin and all of that, and that all sort of goes together. But that's a lot of text, and I know we're going to want this to be relatively big, the map itself. So here's how I would typically approach that. We want pretty much all of this text to have a picture of this next to it while it's being gone through. So I'm guessing we can group this together and then these two paragraphs together, so 2 slides total. So let's start with this text right here. And I'm going to make sure that I replace this text with it because I want to use the formatting. If I moved it all the way to here, it would have put the whole text in that yellow font, and we don't want that. I'm going to get rid of my picture because I don't need it anymore. And since we want that map, we want to see, what would work best there. So, sorry, we'll drink a little bit of water. So I'm going to switch gears here a little bit and see if I can go half screen without having to change my font size, and it looks like I am going to have to change it. So let's try a 22. And if I do 22 here, I do eventually need to come back and do 22 on the other one, but you'll kind of sort through like what that looks like. And the text is really far apart, so I could almost just come in here and make a quick adjustment to that. Maybe drop it down to 34 and see what that looks like. I don't feel like I need quite as much of a space before. We could go down to 6 there. See what that looks like. Still not quite what I want. So I'm going to go down to 0. And there's still so much room up there, but then not down at the bottom. So I'm going to come back here and go down to 32. And that looks pretty good. All right, so I did 32 spacing and down to 22 font. So I'm going to kick back up to my page here. And I'm going to adjust that just so that they are at least somewhat similar. And I think I did 22. Okay. And what that lets me do here actually is uncrop some of it if I want to. Make it a little bit bigger. Okay, come back down here. All right, now I want to put my map right here. So I'm going to come back over here, right click, make sure it comes over clear. I think it did before. Whoa, let's undo that because it likes to, I always click on the outside here so that the slide is not selected, and then I'll paste again and you'll see it comes through fine. The reason it did that is because it was trying to paste it specifically into a text box, which I really don't want it to do. All right, and I want to try to make this around the same size as my box here. Right, so they are different sizes. So if they're going to be different sizes no matter what, I can go ahead and embrace that and see what it looks like. So my shadow is a little different on the 2. So I'm actually considering trying a new way of doing this. I'm going to actually take the text out of my box here, and then I'm going to take the formatting out of this box. I think it's a shadow. Let's make sure. Yep. Okay, so now to keep things consistent, I'm actually going to kick this all the way over to the edge here, where it was before. Okay, and then I'm going to pull this over, make it a teeny bit smaller so that it actually fits into my page itself. All right, and that looks pretty good. When I'm happy with it, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to kick back over here. Oh, I need to make this and this italicized and colored, unless I haven't copied that yet, which I don't think I have. Nope, okay. That's my last little bit. So I'm going to pull this, I'm going to copy it, come down to my slide, the copy of it, replace the text. Okay, and then I need to come here and do Petersburg gold, bold. Oops. All right, so now that this is not actually attached to the backdrop box, I can actually move it around a little bit, and I think that looks pretty good. So my map stays in the same place. Okay, so that's sort of the very first part. This is one little last bit with an image that goes with it. Let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you kind of why it's good to make sure that you want to keep this and the box and everything else very similar, just for the flow of the content itself. So I'm going to duplicate, and then I'm going to come over and copy this. Okay, and that's not as much text, and we definitely have a big picture, and we've had this on the right for so long that I figured maybe it's time to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to click on the outside of my slide. I'm going to just paste so it doesn't get stuck in one of my text boxes, especially because it's an enormous image. Make it smaller. I don't know why it did that. Let me undo and try again. Okay, that was very weird. Okay, that's better. I don't know why it didn't do that the first time. All right, so we got a pretty big image and it's really pretty. So we definitely want to highlight that. So I'm going to see if I can get it, the text to kind of fit where I want it after I've moved that. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to kick my text over here. And that looks pretty good as well. And I'm making sure my T kind of lines up with the top of the image, and same with the last letter. Okay, and then that's looks good. Okay, so we've finished our terroir defined section. I almost feel like this fits better. And I mean, you're welcome to make these changes. This is what I would do if I was going through it. It almost seems like that section even fits a little bit better here. But I'm like hesitant to make any content changes at this point. So maybe for simplicity's sake, I'll just leave it as is. Okay, so now I need to figure out, how do I want these to move? I think, this can slide down like they did on the timeline, and then this can slide over. And so it's on uncover right now, but I want these two to be on, these three to be on fade. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So for the purpose of this, I can just do the presentation. I don't have to actually go into iSpring. We'll come back and we'll change this once we have a better feel for what's in our presentation. Okay, so that's an example of what I was talking about, where if you have text, a good amount of text that kind of goes along with the same image, keep using that image, just keep it in the same exact location for each slide. And then what it does is it almost like moves the content only, even though it is moving the entire slide, it looks like it's just moving the content. And it's a nice smooth look and feel to it when they click next. And then it's more noticeable when you do switch up the image, and it kind of hopefully will wake them up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to escape out of that. And it's time to move on to our next section, which is crew classification. Should have expected that would be a little bit bigger. We might have to adjust where these images sit just because of that, because we probably don't want to make the text any smaller than it already is for the header slides. But we'll come back and do that in a minute. Okay, so I don't have any images for this particular section. What I could do is go back to my original idea, which is to move this particular text right here and make it part of crew classification. And then I can actually use this image as my header image, which I think should be fine. Let's see how that works out. As long as I don't make any changes to the text, I think this should be okay. I definitely want to keep the plots and the church. Let's see how far I can move it over there. I like it. I think it looks good. What do you think? So I want want to uncover for that one. And I'm going to duplicate. And there is, I actually found an open resource image of this bug. So I'm going to see how that works out. And it's somewhere in this presentation. That was just lucky. Looks like I can put a good amount more text in this section. However, I don't want to have to edit my shape of that text because I want the bottom text to be longer. So I just copied it, pasted it, go back to my text, grab this, and see what it looks like in there. It looks like it's probably going to be too much, but it's worth a try. I almost feel like I could probably cut this. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this slide. And then I can just delete this text and finish editing this, and then I'll move to the next section. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go to the next section, and I don't need this anymore. And I don't need this anymore. And I don't need, well, I could keep him because we're still kind of talking about the same thing. So let me undo what I just did. And let me grab this, delete that, and paste that text, whoops, exactly where this was so that it's a nice smooth transition. That'll be its own section. I feel like that moved up a little bit, didn't it? Whoops. We want it to stay the same, so I'm just going to grab this text. Try one more time. That was my fault. I want it to sit right here, exactly like that one. And I want this to sit right there. Exactly like that. Now, when I go between the two, it should be relatively smooth. Okay. Now, you can always try, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but you can always try evening out the text a little bit like that. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it looks weird. In this particular case, that actually looks really good, so I'm going to do that. but I am going to move it over just a hair. And that looks good. Okay, so now we're going to move into the actual classification. So I don't need my little guy anymore. And don't need that to be half screen, and I don't need an extra, well, we'll keep it just in case. So I definitely want this to be in the top. This, I think, should live in its own little box and be sort of designed in its own right. That's unfortunate. I was hoping I could just steal the existing formatting, but I can't. All right, so let's do Petersburg. And there's a little more text underneath it that I need to pull down, so I'm just going to make a copy of that so I don't have to redo the formatting. All right, now all I need to do is edit the way that this looks and feels a little bit, and then I can move on to the next slide. Okay, so that looks good. And you'll notice I'm not spending a ton of time on these. We don't want to spend a lot of time on these. As much as we can pump out as possible to give you a feel for it. We're making an additional 3,000 to do this. And they understand that moving the rest of the text in doesn't mean that it's all going to be completely interactive. It just means that the text is going to be in a compatible SCORM format. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is for this particular lesson, we do have a little section on Champagne Henriot. So we'll just make a slide that sort of, it can look like this for all of them, and feel free to make it look better if you don't like it. So I'm going to duplicate my slide, keep the same theme. I'm going to pull my text over, and then I'll pull the image over. And Carrie really wants these to be centered and everything, so we'll do that. Oops. For her. Petersburg. We can make it a little bit bigger, maybe kick it up to 28. And I don't know why I did that. There it goes. Okay, and it's already gray. We can probably maybe go to, that's a bit much. Maybe go up to 35 point. That looks fine. Center it. And there we have it. Okay, so I'm going to fix my movement now. So I had this one was pushing, this one was uncovering, but I want the rest of these to fade. And I am done here. I'm even going to delete the last one, since I do not need those. And then I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to look at my slides and kind of get a feel for what I have and the sections that I have. And really all I have is terroir defined and then crew classifications. And there is an image for each. So what I'm going to do is come up here. I don't really like that this is bigger than that, so I'm actually going to switch gears and and do that. I think that looks a little bit better. Okay, now I want to keep 2 of my boxes, but I don't need the other 3. Whoops. And I don't need that line that goes between them. But I do like how these work. They look pretty. I just want them to be wider, maybe even a little taller, and I'll adjust more once I have a feel for how the images fit within them. So I'm going to come down here and grab my map. I am going to fit it here, but not do too much to it quite yet. And then come down here, grab my image, kick that over here as well. And what I want is for these 2 to be about the same size. So I can cheat a little bit, and this is 362, so it's perfectly square. So when I crop this, I just want to pay attention to what's happening here. And I want to get it to where it is perfectly square as well. Or at least close enough, and I'm not doing enough. That looks pretty square to me, but maybe that's just my crazy eye. Yep, it's just my crazy eye. That's close enough. I'll just pull the map over to get something else. Okay, so I kind of like it being a little bit bigger. It looks, well, it's probably a little bit too big, so I'll kick that down, make them a little smaller, maybe about right there. And then I'll kick my title up a little. So I'm sorry I'm going into so much detail. The reason I am is because there's really no like step-by-step to give you for each of them because they're all going to be a little different. But if I figured if you see me go through one all the way through, that it would be helpful and almost serve as like a template. So instead of typing, because I don't like spelling terroir, I'm just going to copy that and come here and paste it. Second. Actually, I kind of liked it like that, but I don't like that there's so much space under it. So let's go back and do like a 2. Oh. Okay, I'm dealing with that in a minute. All right, and then crew classification. I do want them to be on the same line, so I will take a shortcut here and put a space. And then I'm just gonna change the font there a little bit. Probably complicated that more than it needed to be. Okay, and then there we have it. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so we got our images in. Let's make sure we have these centered. They don't appear to be. And then let's kick over here and see if we like this being anywhere on the page, since and I don't feel like putting the time in. It's not really worth it because we have something similar on these pages, so I feel like that's enough. Okay. All right, so the last thing I wanted to show you is if you do want to add any animations in, it at least adds an additional layer of fun, at least, into it. So here's a couple tips. Take them or leave them, whatever you want to do. Fading or wiping is a good one, but if you use wiping, you'll want to do from left to make it look like it's almost being written. And then you want to up it to about 2 seconds so that it's not like whoosh and then, you know, kind of annoying. Also make sure that it's with previous, otherwise it won't play automatically and it'll get messed up once you publish it. These are kind of neat to maybe have float in, so I'm going to do float in, and it already did it from the bottom, which is great, and it's already set for a minute, which is also wonderful, and I'm going to do it after previous, and then I'm going to do this one as well, whoops, as a group, so I'm just like selecting the whole thing, float in from the bottom, and then that's also after previous. So now what we have, if you want to open the animation pane, and so I noticed that this came in after the other one, and we don't want to do that. So I got my little image image here, and I want to make sure that that goes with it. With it. Okay, so now it should be right. And I don't know why, but this doesn't look centered to me. So even though it says it is, I'm actually going to adjust it. Okay. And last but not least, oops, this did not like being moved. If you okay, I'm going to take my animations out of the end slide because they don't need to see that again. So I'll just delete them. Then I'm going to go to iSpring and slide properties, and I'm going to fill that in so that they can use their outline. Not going to let me move. Okay, so I'm just going to have to try to remember what was in there. So that was the I don't know why that's there. So we'll need to, oh, that got kicked. That's what's wrong. Okay, let's take a look at it, see how it looks. Oh, I forgot to take the audio out. There's going to be audio in there. Okay, so one of my animations isn't playing automatically, so I'll have to go back in there and fix that. It can be kind of a pain. All right, so there is text or like audio playing right now, but
the Henriot
okay.
family came from Lorraine and settled in Champagne in 16 from a bourgeois family who had been of the Abbé Godineau, a scholar whose works family alliance that was in the Montagne de Reims, 1808, making her family share the name Veuve Henriot Aîné.
Everything else looks okay. Let me go into manage narration. And let me delete my narration. Save and close. I think it's all gone. I don't see anything else. So since they're not going to actually be going into the course, adding the audio might actually be kind of necessary to these. The distributors, that is. If they're not actually going into the course, they won't have access to the audio. So that is something to consider. I just don't know. I'm wondering if maybe we should just get these done first and see where we're at. And if we have time, then we can come back in and put the audio in. That's always something that we can do after the launch date if need be. All right, so I also noticed that there was an issue with my animation, and I already see what the issue is. It's set, that needs to go after previous, and then this needs to be set with previous, so now it should be fine. They should all be zeros, and they are, so I think we're good. Okay, so that is it for this one. I'm going to go ahead and send this to you so that you can kind of start looking through it and thinking through it. You know, the main goal will be to try to do Module 1 throughout this week, if possible. These images that are on the pages, you can find in the Dropbox. So if you go into Champaign 2019, Finney Web Ready, and then into Module 1, there's course page images. And so you can use any of these, any and all of these that you want to use. I also noticed that she made some pretty cool header images that are really pretty. So if you see anything in here that you feel like would go along with Module 1, Module 2, or whatever, feel free to peruse and kind of get a feel for what's in here. And you can use any of them that you want in the course. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that might get you. Okay. All right, so 1.1 and 1.2 are pretty straightforward. So let's start with those. And then 1.3, what you're going to need to do is start in the actual topography one. And I may go ahead and do that one since I've already done the topography one, and that way you don't have to worry about it. Let's see. Climate. This is basically just a breakdown of a table. So this one I think you could do pretty easily. I just need to give you access to this. And you can actually build this text in on the slide before this begins. And this is just that table. So I can send you this pretty easily. Or I can do it in like 2 seconds. Okay, anyway, we will start with 1.1 and 1.2, and then we'll go from there and kind of see where we are. I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. And like I said, right after I'm done with this and I send it to you, I will go ahead and record a tutorial on how to put the audio in so that you can see how that works. Talk to you soon. Bye.